Are you lost too? The little girl asked the lonely executive at the airport.
What he did next changed everything.
O'Hare International Airport buzzed with the chaos of holiday travelers. It was December 24th, and every terminal was packed, with passengers anxious to get home for Christmas. The loudspeaker crackled every few minutes, announcing delays and gate changes in a monotone voice, barely audible over the crowd. People rushed back and forth, dragging suitcases, juggling coffee cups, and checking their phones. Michael Thompson remained motionless amidst the noise. He occupied a seat near a large window, tucked away in a quieter corner of Terminal 3, far from the bustle of the main concourse. Outside, the planes sat motionless, and the artificial snowflakes from the Christmas decorations danced in the shop windows. A delay warning blinked on the screen above his gate. Flight 431 delayed until further notice. Michael didn't react. His black wool overcoat was draped over the back of his chair. A leather briefcase rested beside his polished dress shoes. And right next to him, seeming completely out of place, sat a small, worn teddy bear. The bear didn't match the man at all. Michael was the picture of control. Tailored suit, silver watch, impeccable haircut. But the teddy bear was clearly old. Its stitching had come loose on one ear, and one of its button eyes was slightly off-center. He held it gently, not like an executive clinging to a meaningless object, but like a father remembering a daughter. It was a birthday gift, one that never made it to her. His expression remained unreadable, but his tired, dark, distant eyes told a different story. They weren't focused on anything in particular, not the screens, not the people, just somewhere else. Maybe 5 years ago, maybe further back. Suddenly, he felt a tug on his sleeve. Michael blinked, startled, and turned around. Standing before him was a little girl, no older than 6. Her cheeks were rosy from the icy air conditioning. Her soft brown curls poked out from under a reindeer-shaped knit beanie. She clutched a small backpack against her chest, the zipper slightly open, revealing the edge of a storybook inside. She tilted her head and asked earnestly, "Are you lost too? I can help you find your mommy." Michael froze. Of all the words from all the people, that tiny voice, so innocent, so sure, pierced right through his carefully built walls. He opened his mouth to say, "I'm not lost," but the words never came out. He looked into her big, round eyes, filled with light. There was no fear in them, only kindness, a sort of bravery, and something he hadn't seen in a long time. Faith. So instead he asked softly, "Are you lost?" The little girl nodded, but her smile didn't waver. "Mommy was right here, but then I saw the pretzel stand, and when I turned around, she was gone. But it's okay. I'm looking for her. Do you want to come with me?" Michael hesitated. Logic told him this was someone else's child. Someone was probably looking for her right now. He should alert the airport staff, call security, follow protocol. But he didn't move. This girl, this little stranger, had invaded his silence and brought something to the surface. Something he thought he'd buried forever. He stood up. Slowly, towering over her, but she didn't back away. She simply reached out her hand, covered in a red mitten. He looked at her hand, then at the bear on the chair, then back at her, and nodded. "Let's find her together." She smiled like she'd just won a prize. "Good." She slipped her hand into his with total confidence and started leading him away from the window. They walked, past security checkpoints, food courts, and souvenir shops. He didn't say a word, just followed her steady pace. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his. She chattered as they walked, about candy canes, and how her mommy always played holiday songs on her phone when she was scared. Michael listened. He really listened. For the first time in a long time. Some people watched them pass. Some smiled. Others did a double take. A tall man in a black suit, walking hand in hand with a little girl in a reindeer beanie. To the world, they looked like father and daughter. But to Michael, it was something completely different. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about meetings or deadlines. He wasn't drowning in grief. He wasn't hiding from Christmas. He was walking, moving forward. And with every step, the echo of the voice of a little girl from moments before repeated softly in his mind. "Are you lost too?" Maybe he was, but now, maybe not so much. Chapter 2. The terminal stretched on endlessly, glowing under artificial lights. Michael walked beside Emily, her small hand wrapped firmly around his fingers. Despite the crowd surrounding them, she walked with determination, head held high. "Let's check the pretzel stand first," Emily suggested, tugging on his arm. "That's where I saw the cinnamon twists. Mommy doesn't like too much sugar, but she lets me have the salty ones sometimes." They passed a cluster of shops, each one stuffed with Christmas decorations and last-minute travelers. Michael matched Emily's pace, watching her skip from one window to another, scanning every face. "She has hair. Blonde, like the sun," Emily explained. "And she wears glasses when she reads. She's writing a story about a squirrel that learns to skateboard." Michael raised an eyebrow. "A squirrel that skateboards?" Emily nodded proudly. "Mommy says anything is possible in stories." He almost laughed, but not in a mocking way. He was caught off guard by a warm, quiet feeling in his chest. "And every night, she tells me." "Stories," Emily added, swinging her little backpack. "Even when she's tired from work." They walked through the food court. Then they checked the airport play area. No sign of Sarah. Michael knelt down beside Emily. Still no luck. She looked around, lips pursed in thought. "Maybe she's looking for me too, and we keep missing each other." "Maybe," he said softly. An airport employee passing by stopped, frowning slightly at the pair. "Excuse me, sir, is this your daughter?" Michael hesitated. It would have been easy to say no. But then Emily looked at him, eyes wide and full of trust. "Yes," he said gently. "We're just trying to find her mother." The employee nodded politely. "Check with the information desk, if you haven't already. They might have received a report." "We'll do that," Michael replied. As they kept walking, Emily hummed softly. He recognized the melody, Jingle Bells. Her version was off-key, but it was sweet, exactly like a child's. "Aren't you scared?" he asked suddenly. Emily shook her head. "Not really. Mommy always says that if you're lost, just be kind. The magic will find you." Michael looked at her. "Magic?" "Uh-huh," she said, smiling. "Christmas magic. I know we'll find her. I believe in it." There was a pause. Then, as if the words came from a forgotten part of him, Michael replied, "Maybe I do too." And for the first time in years, he almost meant it. Chapter 3. The security station was a blur of movement and silent tension. Sarah stood at the counter, her fingers gripping the strap of her purse. Her blonde hair was messy from running through the terminal, and her cheeks were red, not from the cold, but from the fear she was desperately trying to hide. Her voice was steady when she spoke to the officer, but her eyes gave her away. She's 6 years old, curly brown hair, red coat, a little reindeer backpack. Her name is Emily. We were going to gate 15 when she got distracted. I turned around and she was gone. The officer nodded calmly. "We made an announcement, ma'am. Please calm down. These situations usually resolve quickly. Children are braver than we think." Sarah tried to nod, tried to believe, but the pain in her chest only grew. On the other side of the terminal, Michael and Emily were approaching the main corridor again, when a voice from the intercom buzzed above them. "If anyone has found a missing girl," matching this description. A flight attendant nearby who heard the announcement looked at Emily and Michael, then leaned in. "I think this might be about her," she said softly. "Come with me." Emily's eyes lit up. She turned to Michael. "See? I told you the magic would work." They followed the attendant past a few gates, then down a short hallway leading to the security station. The moment Emily turned the corner, her eyes went wide. "Mommy!" Sarah looked up just in time to see her daughter running toward her. She knelt with open arms, just in time, to catch the flying bundle of red coat and brown curls. "Oh, my baby," Sarah sighed, hugging Emily so tight, as if fearing the world might try to take her away again. "Are you okay? Are you all right?" Emily buried her face in her mother's shoulder. "I found you. I said I would." Sarah laughed through her tears, rocking her daughter in her arms. Then, slowly, she looked up at the man who had brought her back. Michael stood a few meters away, silent, uncertain. He shifted his weight slightly, as if about to turn and leave without being noticed. But Sarah stood up, still holding Emily. Her eyes met his. "Wait," she said, taking a step forward. "You brought her back to me." "I just kept her company," Michael replied. "She did all the work." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining. "Even so, thank you. I don't even know your name." He hesitated, then offered a hand. "Michael." She shook it. Her handshake was warm. Sarah. For a moment, the world around them just disappeared. The airport noise, the shuffling of passengers' feet, even the low hum of the announcements. It was just the three of us. Them. A little girl safe in the arms of her mother, a man who hadn't smiled in years, and a woman who had been holding on to nothing but hope. When Sarah pulled back, she noticed something in Emily's hands. Nestled between her fingers was a soft, worn-out teddy bear. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. "Where did you get that, sweetie?" Emily turned the bear gently. "It was in his bag. He didn't say anything about it, but he looked lonely." Sarah looked at Michael. He paused. Then he offered the faintest smile. It belonged to someone important. Sarah didn't ask anything else. She didn't need to. And somehow, in that silent understanding, something unspoken passed between them. Chapter 4. The storm outside had grounded more flights. The airport buzzed with tension as people scrambled for updates. They stood in long lines or sprawled out on chairs trying to get comfortable. Overhead, another announcement echoed. Flight 674 to Portland has been canceled. Next update in 2 hours. Sarah stared at the board, her hand resting gently on Emily's back. Her daughter had fallen asleep in her arms, warm, safe, but completely exhausted. She looked around. Most of the food spots were packed. A few chairs were still free, but the thought of spending hours sitting on cold plastic again made her shiver. Beside her, Michael checked his watch, then, as if making a silent decision, turned to her. "There's a little spot upstairs. Quiet, hot food. Would you like to join me?" Sarah blinked. "You don't have to." "I know," he said softly. "But I'd like to. You two look like you could use a break." Sarah hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that. Thank you." The restaurant wasn't fancy, just a cafe tucked away above the main concourse, but it was quiet, with soft lighting, and corner booths where the airport chaos faded into a distant hum. A waitress led them to a booth near the window. Michael helped Sarah settle Emily onto the padded seat, folding his coat to use as a makeshift pillow. The little girl snuggled in instantly, her breathing soft and steady. They ordered simple meals, soup, bread, hot tea, and for a while, they ate in a comfortable silence, broken only by the clinking of spoons and the occasional announcement echoing from below. Sarah watched Michael as he stirred his tea. Despite his polished look, the tailored suit, the expensive watch, there was something quiet and steady about him, something unexpectedly gentle. She cleared her throat. "I really appreciate this. It was supposed to be a short layover. I didn't count on the delays." "Where are you two headed?" he asked. "Portland," she said. "A new city, a fresh start. I have a friend who offered us a place to stay while I look for work. I write children's books at night, but mostly, I'm a teacher." "It's been tough." Michael nodded. "That's brave." Sarah gave a weak smile. "Some days it feels brave. Most days, it just feels like survival." The waitress returned quietly with an extra cup and a pot of fresh tea. Then, to Sarah's surprise, she placed a small wool blanket over Emily's sleeping form. "I didn't ask for this," Sarah said, confused. The waitress smiled and glanced at Michael. "He ordered it, said the little one might be cold." Sarah looked at him. "You didn't have to do that." He shrugged. Looked like she needed it. Sarah stared at him for a moment, her heart tightening unexpectedly. "Most people don't notice," she murmured. Michael looked her in the eye, his voice low. "You're doing a good job. I hope someone's told you that lately." Sarah froze. Of all the things she expected to hear from a stranger, that wasn't one of them. Not something so kind, so necessary. She swallowed hard. "No, not lately." "Well," he said, finishing the last sip of his tea, "then let me be the first." For the first time, Sarah didn't feel like someone people pitied. She felt seen, understood. She looked at Emily, sleeping peacefully under the soft blanket. Then she looked back at Michael. "Thank you, Michael." He nodded once, his expression unreadable, but softer than before. And so, in the middle of a crowded airport filled with delays and strangers, something rare unfolded. Not a rescue, not a romance. Just a simple, unexpected, real connection. Chapter 5. The blizzard had raged all night, grounding flights and draining everyone's energy. By morning, the airport's buzz had faded to a quiet murmur. Passengers were exhausted, children were restless, and announcements were on repeat. To relieve the crowding, the airline staff had started guiding travelers to designated waiting areas based on their ticket class. "Mr. Thompson," said a flight attendant when she saw Michael, "we can transfer you and your companions to the VIP lounge now." Michael nodded quickly, then turned to Sarah and Emily, who were nearby, watching people shuffle past. Sarah hesitated. "You don't have to include us," but Emily tugged on her sleeve, eyes wide. "Can we go, Mommy?" Michael said there's hot chocolate." Michael gave her a small smile. "There's even marshmallows. I checked." Sarah looked at both of them. She didn't like feeling dependent on others. But this wasn't just about her. And for the first time, a part of her wanted to say yes. She nodded. Okay. The VIP lounge was a different world. Quiet, warm, with soft lighting, plush armchairs, and a snack buffet that made Emily's eyes light up. Michael handled the check-in with the staff while Sarah helped Emily with her coat. They settled into a corner by the large windows where snow was still falling in lazy spirals outside the glass. Michael opened his laptop, answering a few emails while sipping black coffee. Sarah leaned back in the plush chair, watching Emily explore the little play area nearby. A moment later, Emily came back holding a plastic checkers board with both hands. She dropped it onto the coffee table between them. "Let's play," she announced. "Whoever loses has to tell a real secret." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Oh, careful. She always wins." Michael looked from Sarah to Emily, then set his laptop aside. Challenge accepted. Emily stuck her tongue out the corner of her mouth as she concentrated. Michael played well, but she played better. She won the first round. "All right, Mr. Michael," she smiled. "Time to spill the beans." Michael laughed, a rare, warm sound. "All right. When I was your age, I used to hide baseball cards under my bed. So many, actually, that my mom found a whole stack covered in dust bunnies." Sarah let out a loud laugh, covering her mouth. Emily giggled uncontrollably. The second game started. Sarah joined in. Emily won again. Sarah groaned playfully. "Oh no." She looked at Michael, then at Emily. "My turn, right?" She paused, then said softly, "I used to be afraid of thunderstorms." Emily gasped. "But we have them all the time." Sarah smiled. "I had to learn, because being afraid and being trapped feel kind of the same." Her voice hung in the air longer than expected. Michael watched her closely. The way she said it wasn't dramatic. It was honest, steady. Somehow it reached that silent part of him that had felt trapped for far too long. The next round never finished. Emily started blinking slower and slower, her small body curling up in the corner of the sofa. Sarah took off her coat and draped it over her daughter, gently brushing the curls from her forehead. Michael sat motionless, watching them with a kind of reverence he couldn't quite name. Minutes ticked by. Emily stirred, eyes half closed, and rummaged through her little reindeer backpack. She pulled out a crumbly homemade brownie wrapped in tissue paper and placed it in Michael's palm. "I saved it for you," she murmured. "Mommy says good things are meant to be shared." Michael stared at the broken brownie. His throat tightened. It was the first gift he'd received in 5 years that didn't come with strings attached. No business, no formalities. He didn't eat it. He carefully folded the tissue paper and tucked the brownie into a small compartment inside his leather wallet. A keepsake. Sarah noticed, but she didn't say a word. Later, an airline staff member appeared. "Excuse me, your flight should be resuming in the next 2 or 3 hours." Sarah sat up straight, glancing at Emily, who was still dozing, and then at Michael. They were all thinking the same thing. The end of this strange, quiet chapter was drawing near. Michael stood up and pulled a small notepad from his jacket. He scribbled something down, folded the paper, and handed it to Sarah. "In case you want to continue the game." She unfolded a personal email address, and underneath it, the title of the children's book she had mentioned the night before. He remembered. She looked at him, speechless. There were no grand gestures, no pressure, just a man reaching out in the most human way possible. Sarah smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen. Chapter 6. The storm had finally begun to break. By morning, the airport felt calmer, not because there were fewer people, but because something in the air had shifted. Hope, perhaps. Movement. An opportunity to go home, or towards something that might eventually become home. Michael stood by the same large windows in the VIP lounge, coffee in hand. The snow had stopped falling. Flights were being cleared for takeoff. One by one. An announcement echoed through the room. Flight 828 to Portland. Immediate boarding at gate 17. Sarah froze. That was her flight. She quickly checked the ticket in her coat pocket. Then she checked on Emily, still snuggled under her jacket, half asleep but stirring. Michael watched them, reading the change in Sarah's eyes before she said a word. "They called us early," she said softly. "Looks like we're the first to go." Emily stretched, blinking against the morning light. "Are we leaving already?" Sarah nodded, stood up, and helped her daughter put on her coat. Her movements were calm, but there was something hesitant in them, as if every button she fastened was sealing away something unfinished. Michael stayed where he was, hands deep in his coat pockets. He didn't try to stop them, didn't make some grand gesture, but he watched closely. Sarah reached for her bag, getting ready to leave. Then she turned to him. "I'm not good at saying the right things," she said, "but thank you for seeing us off, for being kind without asking for anything in return." He shook his head. "You never needed saving, Sarah, but it was nice walking beside you for a while." Emily looked up at him, her eyes as big and round as ever. "Will you be on the same flight next Christmas?" she asked. Michael smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll try," he said softly. Then he crouched down to her level and held out his hand. "Thanks for letting me play checkers, and for the brownie." Emily beamed, and instead gave him a big hug. Just like that, they were gone. The boarding area at gate 17 was packed. Sarah and Emily found their seats and waited. As the plane taxied to the runway, Sarah reached into her bag to pull out Emily's sketchbook and found something she hadn't packed. A small, worn-out teddy bear. It was the same one Emily had held tight that first night at the airport, the one that had sat silently next to Michael. Sarah stared at it, stunned. Emily noticed it and grabbed it. "He gave it back to us." Sarah didn't say anything for a long moment. She turned the bear over slowly, as if it might whisper something if she held it gently enough. There was no note, no tag, just the bear. But somehow, it said everything. Chapter 7. 1 year later, back in Chicago, the city was as loud and fast as ever. Michael walked into his top-floor office. He shook the winter chill off his jacket and paused in the doorway. The room was spotless, modern, perfect. But something about the quiet clung to him differently now. He sat down at his desk and looked at the photo that had always been there. His daughter, smiling widely, frozen in time. He reached into his wallet and pulled out the paper-wrapped brownie. Still there, still safe. Then, slowly, Michael opened his laptop and clicked to compose a new message to Sarah. Subject: bedtime stories. His fingers hovered over the keys. Then he wrote, "You mentioned your favorite bedtime story once. I bought the book. It's charming. So are you." He stared at the screen for a long time. Then, without overthinking it, he clicked send. There were no promises, no expectations. Just a beginning. Just a choice. It started with a thank you note. A simple email Sarah sent the day after she and Emily landed in Portland. She wrote it at the kitchen table of her new little apartment, with Emily fast asleep beside her, hugging the teddy bear Michael had left behind. "I hope your meetings went well. Thank you again for the hot chocolate, the game, and your quiet kindness. Emily says she misses her Christmas friend." Michael read the message late at night, alone in his penthouse overlooking Chicago. He hovered over the reply button for a long time. Unsure if he should reply, he finally did. The meetings went well. The airport was better, though. "Tell Emily I miss her too. Does she still cheat at checkers?" That was all. But it opened a door that neither of them ever fully closed. Over the next few weeks, the messages continued. Sometimes it was just a few lines, a book that Emily liked, a funny moment Sarah had at her new job, or a photo of a coffee mug Michael had accidentally broken at the office. But slowly, they became longer, deeper. Stories shared only after midnight, when Emily was asleep and the city outside Michael's window finally went quiet. One night, Sarah wrote, "Emily asked if you know Santa Claus personally. She insists that anyone who gives out chocolate and carries a teddy bear must be friends with him." Michael replied, "I don't know Santa, but I do know a brave little girl who believes in magic more than anyone I've ever met." Then, one afternoon, an email from Sarah arrived with an attachment. "This is something I've been working on. My latest story. I almost deleted it, but then I thought maybe you'd like to read it. No pressure." The file was titled, "The Girl Who Got Lost, but Found Everything." Michael opened it, intending to just glance at it. He didn't stop reading until the very last line. It was about a girl in an airport, a tall stranger, a bear, and a brownie, and how sometimes home isn't a place. It's a hand you reach for when you're scared. There were parts that made him laugh, and others that made his throat go tight. The girl in the story was Emily, but she also wasn't. The man was him, only kinder, braver. The mother was Sarah in all her quiet strength. He didn't reply that night. Instead, Michael forwarded the manuscript without explanation to an editor he trusted at a children's book publisher. "Read this," he wrote. "Just read it." He didn't tell Sarah. For days, the emails between them continued as usual. Jokes, stories, and Emily's drawings scanned and sent with titles like Mr. Michael and the Bear. Then, 2 weeks later, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table again, checking her email before dinner. She saw the subject line first. "We would love to publish your book." Her hand flew to her mouth. She read the message over and over again, her heart pounding. The note from the editor was kind, personal, and warm. The book had touched them deeply. They wanted it for their winter lineup, but the last paragraph stopped her cold. "We especially loved the dedication. The story feels rooted in something real, like kindness found when you least expect it, inspired by a real encounter at an airport, where magic didn't need reindeer, just two strangers and a little girl who believed in the right kind of miracles." She reread the words. Then she looked into the living room, where Emily was coloring on the floor. Sarah didn't have to guess who had sent it. She opened her inbox, clicked on Michael's last message, and started writing. "You read it, right? And you sent it without telling me." She paused, then added, "You know what? You didn't have to fix anything for me." But then her fingers kept moving. "Even so, you reminded me that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to let someone believe in me before I believed in myself." And with that, she clicked send. On the other side of the country, while the winter wind howled over Chicago, Michael read her reply, closed his laptop, and leaned back in his chair with his heart a little lighter. He didn't reply immediately. Some moments deserved silence, the kind that settles softly like snow before turning into something more. Chapter 8. The Reunion. The airport was so noisy, so busy, so full of flashing lights and tired travelers, just like it had been a year ago. But Michael wasn't the same. He was standing at the arrival gates, not in a private lounge, not in a suit, not hiding. He was wearing a dark blue dress shirt, jeans, and he wasn't carrying a laptop or a briefcase, just a small bouquet of winter flowers and a hardcover copy of The Girl Who Got Lost But Found Everything. The book had become a quiet success, but to Michael, it meant much more than bestseller lists. It was the map to something he didn't know he was still looking for. He checked the screen again. Their flight had landed, and then, through the sea of passengers, he saw them. Sarah, with her golden hair tied back in a ponytail, a light blazer over her shoulders, and Emily, now 7 years old, but still with the same round eyes and brave steps, dragging a small pink suitcase behind her. Emily saw him first, dropped her suitcase, and ran with open arms. "You found us again." Michael knelt down as she threw herself into his arms. He hugged her tight, resting his forehead against hers. "No," he said softly. "I came to where I knew you would be. Important people shouldn't have to be found twice." Sarah arrived seconds later, her breath visible in the cold air conditioning, her eyes unreadable. She stopped a few steps away, unsure. He stood up slowly. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she replied softly. They looked at each other for a long moment. In Emily's arms was the old bear, still patched up and loved. Michael noticed it and smiled. "How was the flight?" "Long," she said, smiling back. "But we're here now. I heard someone got a long-term contract with a publisher in Chicago." "It's true," Sarah nodded. "And someone else offered to help us look for apartments. Said he knows the city well." "That's true," said Michael. She stepped a little closer.
And someone said he would be here.
I wasn't sure if he was serious.
I was serious.
Sarah looked at the flowers, then at the book in his hands. Her book that she almost never sent. Michael took a deep breath. This isn't perfect. We still have different cities, different lives, a lot to figure out. But this is real. I'm here, and if you'll have me, I'd like to be part of wherever you go next. She stared at him, her eyes softening, then reached out and took the flowers. It's the best moment I've had in years, she whispered. Emily grabbed both their hands, one on each side. Can we go now? I want a hot dog and maybe some popcorn. Michael laughed. You're still the boss. And they stepped out through the terminal's glass doors into the crisp air of Chicago. People rushed past them in every direction. Cars honked, lights flashed, and the typical winter flurries fell. But for a moment, there was only the three of them. Emily looked up as they walked. Are we still looking for something? Sarah looked at Michael, her hand still in his. No, sweetie, she said warmly. I think we've already been found. And behind them, the airport faded into the city's glow. It wasn't an end, just the right place to begin. If this story touched your heart, just like the kindness of Emily touched a man who thought he had nothing left to feel, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that warm the soul. Every week, we bring you heartfelt stories of connection, healing, and unexpected hope. Because sometimes, all it takes is a small moment, a question, a smile, a choice, to change everything. Follow us for more stories that stay with you long after they end. And remember, the people we are destined to meet always find their way back. What city are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Sending you a big hug. See you next time.